How good is Arlecchino actually compared to Hudao? Is she like way better damage-wise or only slightly better? It's complicated. It's more complicated than it should be. The main thing that sets Arlecchino apart from Hutao in a positive way is that when you take things outside of just a DPS sheet and you look at actual practical output, there's a lot of advantages that Arlecchino has that are gonna make her perform a lot better. Right? So, like, for example, right? Let me open Excel. Let's say you have a character that has 60k DPS, right? When you're looking at Hu Tao, the way that it's actually going to happen is you're going to be doing your setup for like around 5, maybe a little bit more seconds, where your DPS is going to be really low. Right? Where you're using your Farina abilities, your Yulon abilities, Lonen or Xianyun. Right, this is Hu Tao, this is Arlecchino. And then you swap to Hu Tao and you start hitting. And you'll be hitting for like 90k DPS or something. For like 10 seconds. Or 9 seconds or whatever. I guess it'll be more than that, actually. I guess your setup is longer, actually. That's the problem. There you go. Right? So this is what the Hu Tao team at around 60k DPS would look like, right? You have your setup, right? That takes a while because Farina has long animations, Yulon has long animations, Xianyun has long animations, or Ilonen. And then you have your uptime where you do all of your damage. But if you look at the total amount of damage that you've dealt, it looks something like this. Arlecchino in a similar team. It's not. It's obviously not going to be exactly the same team. Arlecchino's setups tend to be a little bit faster, because you pretty much always play her with Bennett, who has much shorter animations than 5-star characters do. And then, if you're playing her with Kazuha or Shilonen, you generally don't really care too much about using their burst, which is another way that speeds up your setup. So instead of having around a 7, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Instead of having around an 8-second setup, which like realistically it's more like 7, but whatever, right? You take a second to walk to the enemy, whatever. Instead of having around an 8-second setup, your setup happens more over the course of like 5 seconds. After that, Arlecchino's fucking bullshit kicks in, and she starts her damage at like 200k DPS. But obviously, the more she attacks, the more bond of life she loses, and then it goes down. Like 170k, 140k. And then let me like make this a little bit fall off a little bit faster. I want to get them to around the same. I guess I could just do. All right, so they have around the same DPS now. Cool, Pog. But if you look at how the damage over time happens, right? I want this to not move downward. And then if you graph both of these, something went wrong. Right. That's what went wrong. Now it's gonna work. I forgot my x-axis. There you go, right? And then if you grab both of these, you realize even if over a full rotation they have about the same DPS, unless it takes you exactly a full rotation or exactly 2 full rotations to kill an enemy, the character who front loads their damage will deal 400k damage in 7 seconds, whereas the character whose damage is more sustained and with a longer setup will take 11 seconds. So even though they have relatively similar DPS, when your characters are very well invested, and you reach the HP breakpoints to kill enemies faster, or sorry, when your characters are very well invested and you can reach the HP breakpoints to kill enemies in 1 or 2 rotations, the difference between front-loaded and sustained damage profiles starts mattering a lot more in practice. And a character that's more front-loaded will start clearing significantly faster. It's not going to be a lot of seconds faster, but percentage-wise, it's going to be pretty big. Sure, they're all going to clear pretty fast, but the one that's clearing 4 seconds faster on an 11-second clear, that's a pretty big deal. And if you were to carry this over for longer, fuck. Oh, this is going to be a pain in the ass to select, isn't it? But yeah. When it starts taking more rotations, the difference between 46 and 49 isn't that big of a deal, right? But when you're killing enemies quickly, the difference becomes bigger. It's part of why Molani is a character that is so good in speedrunning, despite not actually being significantly higher DPS than Neuvillette. Neuvillette is a character who has relatively long setups and no front load whatsoever. He's just entirely sustained. Which means that as a speedrunning character, he's not that good. He's so strong that he's still a viable speedrunning character, but his damage profile is completely, it runs completely opposed to what makes a good speedrunning character. That's the first main reason why Arlecchino tends to be a better character than Hu Tao. The second main reason is that this graph isn't actually entirely accurate. In reality, starting on the second rotation, here, you're not actually doing the same amount of damage that you were on the first rotation. You're doing more because you carried over some Bond of Life. And so if the enemy is surviving multiple rotations, Arlecchino's DPS becomes higher, which obviously is going to make a pretty big difference. A higher DPS means faster clears. On top of that, if enemies die mid-rotations and you have multiple waves or stuff like that, with Arlecchino, that means you carry over more Bond of Life to your next rotation. With Hu Tao, you don't get any upside. Yeah, and then there's also the fact that Arlecchino has a little bit of AoE, which can make a difference. Although, honestly, I think Arlecchino's AoE most of the time doesn't matter. I generally treat her mostly as a single-target character. There's a few exceptions, and, like, she's not entirely single-target, but, like, her AoE is really small. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Asking for my case, I have C0 Hu Tao with Homa. Will it be okay to go for Arlecchino on her rerun or another elemental DPS? I have Molani and Shilonen. So, one thing that I see a lot of people often mistaken about is the idea that you need to have multiple characters of the same or that you need to have a carry of each element, or that you need to have, or you can't have multiple carries of the same element. I've talked about this before, but I actually don't think Arlecchino and Hu Tao have that much overlap in their team building. They have some, don't get me wrong. Arlecchino's best teammate is Bennett, and while Hu Tao can use Bennett, he's not particularly, like, necessary or anything like that. Vape Arlecchino is good, but I don't actually think it's as good as people think it is. Or rather, I think the non-Vape Arlecchino team options are better than people give them credit for. And so, when it comes to building Arlecchino teams, most of the time, I tend to lean towards either something like this, like this, like this, like this, like this. And as it turns out, pretty much almost all the characters I used here aren't really part of Hu Tao's best teams, right? Hu Tao's best team is either Shilonen or Xianyan here. If you don't use Shilonen, you can use Kazuha, right? For that. So either Shilonen or Xianyan here, Yelan Farina or Xingqiu Farina, which means that you can very easily play both. What about Rosaria for Arlecchino? I don't think the timing lines up. I can test it just in case, but I'm fairly sure it doesn't. I haven't played Rosaria in a while, though. But then there's also the fucking Circle Impact bullshit, which is cringe, but that's okay. Yeah, no. We lose the melt instantly. That timing was about as good as it gets, and we lost the melt instantly. It's just not fast enough. I think C6K is the only character that works here. What about Ganyu? Ganyu's application isn't consistent enough. But yeah, for those of you that don't know why C6K is necessary for this, it's because default Kaya hits every 0.8 seconds, I think? No. 0.6? No, 0.8. Yeah. This is C0 to C5. This is C6. And C6 hits around every 0.6 seconds. The way that the ICD works, you're going to have a hit here, right? This is going to be application. I guess, yeah. Cryo. Nothing here, and then cryo. And then here you're going to have your time rule reset, which means you're going to have the next cryo at 3.2. In other words, you get it at 0, then 2.4. Then 3.2, then 5.6. And you end up with 2.4 seconds between applications, which is too long. 2.4 seconds is enough for Arlecchino to attack 4 times, and if she attacks 4 times, she's gonna melt, and then apply Pyro before you reapply the Cryo Aura. At C6, you still have the Cryo up on the first hit, and on the 4th hit, but the 4th hit happens faster than this 5th hit, the one that happens at 2.4 seconds, doesn't apply Cryo anymore. And then it goes to 3.2 and you Cryo again, right? Oh, sorry, at 3, not 3.2, I'm an idiot. And you'll also apply Cryo at 4.8. Which means the longest duration between two cryo hits is 1.8 seconds, which technically can be enough for Arlecchino to attack 4 times, but as long as you're doing in 3D, it won't be. Yeah, that's true, Han So-young. You have to dash cancel your charge attack if you don't want things to go wrong, which means you can't proc Arlecchino's signature weapon. That is true. Also, get fucked, whale. Yeah, so as you can see, right, the aura doesn't get fucked as long as you do your dash cancels properly. Just because it lines up very well. It's not that Kaya's app is like that good, nor is it that Arlecchino's app is that slow. It's just that everything lines up very well. Dude.